you were born on a U.S. Air Force base in Germany. Not
Yes.
many people can say that, I don't know how many hundreds can claim that they came to work in the middle of the military. And for some time, we were traveling around, as far as I understood. Can you talk me through that?
Well, very long story short. As I said, my mother's family came to the land of Israel 102 years ago when they heard that the Jews were returning. This was after actually, they heard about it during First World War when some of the British forces were in Iraq, and Jewish communities usually worked together. They did business. And if you went from Afghanistan, say, to Persia or to Iraq and places, you usually were hosted by the Jewish community because you went to the synagogue. They were always very religious. And the rumors started spreading that Jews were returning. So my grandfather and my great-grandfather, they came to Israel in 1918 to see that this was indeed happening. Jews were returning. They saw, yes, they went back. It takes them a year to get here, a year back, gather the whole family. And he was the head of the Afghan Jewish community. And they came to the land to Jerusalem and lived in Jerusalem. So my mother was born here. And her sisters, who were much older, were married to Jews of German descent. And after World War II, their families who remained in Germany, they went back to Germany to try to find family and locate relatives. So my mother's sisters went with their husbands. There were two, went to their husbands, and they lived in Frankfurt as they had a business there. They had a restaurant. And when my mother finished her military service in the late 1950s, she went to visit her sisters in Germany. And they had a restaurant that was serving American GIs. And my mother, this Afghan-descended Middle Eastern Jew, dark-looking, very pretty woman, fell in love with this blonde, blue-eyed American non-Jew. The opposites attract. He was attracted to the dark Middle Eastern woman. She was attracted to the blonde, blue-eyed American. And they got married. My dad converted to Judaism. Very interesting. When I did the DNA test, they showed one side. So I knew my mother's family was very simple. Babylonia, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. Suddenly I have, again, in the two cases, I had two cases of Middle East basin, meaning Turkey, land of Israel, Egypt. But then I have Italy, Britain, Spain, Netherlands, Germany. It's like the entire history of persecution of Jews from Italy, being taken from the land of Israel to Italy. And this could only be my father's side of the family. And my grandfather did say to me years ago, when there was this whole thing of roots in the United States, the series, there was a television series. So many Americans check their roots. And my grandfather says to me, you know what? And these are what I call redneck Americans from middle Pennsylvania. You can't be more goy than that. Here they're saying that when they went back, that their relatives who came about 100 and some 200 years ago from Prussia were most likely Jewish. Their last name was Zeman, and they changed it into something easier for the Americans in Ellis Island. But the interesting thing was that years later, I learned from a relative whose last name was von Stetten, which is definitely not Jewish. And he says to me, oh, you know, your grandmother, I spoke there. And he says, oh, you speak with the passion of a Methodist preacher. And I laughed. I said, oh, thank you. And he says, no, I'm serious. You know, your grandmother was Methodist. So I had no idea. I knew they were Protestant. And he says, no. So you probably don't know that your grandmother was Jewish. I say, what? Riesinger is a Jewish last name. They were Jewish as well. So I find out that also probably on my father's side, they were Jewish. But skipping all that history, coming to the early 1960s, I was born there. My parents married. I was born in the American Air Force Base in Germany. My dad was in the American Air Force. We went around to North Carolina, to Turkey, to Pennsylvania, to Florida. My dad then retired after 20 years in the American Air Force. And my mother said, well, why don't we try Israel? And in 1971, we moved to Israel. For us as kids, it was, all right, it's another country we go to. Every year we moved a house. Every 2 years we moved a country. So we're just moving to another place. We always heard about Israel, but I was usually the only, when we grew up in the South United States in the 60s, I was like the only Jewish kid around. My mom being Israeli.
How did that feel to be the only Jewish in the block?
I give a lot of credit to my mother, and I think because she's Israeli, she never hid it. She was never shy about it. She was never, so any place we went, I remember I was once made fun of in Christmas because, what are you going to get for Christmas? And I said, nothing. I don't celebrate. Oh, you don't celebrate it. You're not getting, you're a bad boy. And I said, no, we're Jewish. Oh, you're Jewish. And it was about the extent of, I don't even see it as anti-Semitism. It was haunting and the kids doing things. My mom didn't take kindly to it. And she went to the school to say, look, you have to educate your kids here. And to the credit of the school in the 1960s in the Deep South, they gave my mom the stage to come to every class and talk about what is Jewish and how we celebrate things differently. And in the Christmas pageant that we had, and I went to a public school, as you can obviously tell, at the Christmas pageant, at the end of it, they then said, this thing I remember very vividly, we have our Jewish friends here, they're celebrating Hanukkah, and they did this song about the dreidel, and everybody was clapping. And afterwards, a lot of people came up to my mom and said to her, wow, it's so, and they introduced my mom to the school. And a lot of the parents came up to my mom afterwards and said, wow, we're Jewish as well. How did you have the nerve to say that you're Jewish? And my mom said, how did you not have the nerve to say this? And I remember that very vividly. And I've always been an unapologetic, proud Zionist and Jew because of my mother. And I give credit to my dad's family as well. We were family. So when people talk to me about Christians, to me, it's family. It's not just Christians. And they were very receptive and very accepting. And we would celebrate Christmas at their place, and they would come to our place to celebrate Hanukkah. And it was wonderful. I only years later realized the tensions that supposedly exist. It's not that they didn't try to convert me. I would get these brochures from Baptists. I never paid attention. I would give it to my mom. What did I understand? And my mom would write them back, thank you very much, but we're Jewish. We appreciate your trying. And I still treat that to this day when I have Christians trying to convert me. I say, I'm very confident in what I believe in. I thank you. Someday if the Messiah does return, we'll know if it's Jesus or somebody else. And even if it is Jesus, he's going to say, when they tell him he's Christian, he's going to say, no, I'm not. I'm Jewish. So it's a no-lose situation for us. But so I grew up with that. And then when we came to Israel, it was very shocking to find out everybody's Jewish. The guy at the store is Jewish. The guy peeing in the middle of the street. I remember saying to him, I was 10 years old, saying, that guy is Jewish too? Oh, yeah. Everybody was Jewish here. So it was very interesting. It was a wonderful country. I remember waking up the first day we were in Ashkelon. Ashkelon is the city nearest the Gaza Strip. Yeah. And I remember waking up. They put us in a immigrant ole, as we call it, reception area. And we opened our windows to the Mediterranean Sea. It was near the beach in Ashkelon. Wonderful sun. The weather was perfect. The blue sea. And here we grew up, and even though 2 years later was the Yom Kippur War, we had the Christianing, the baptizing, and becoming Israeli. I was almost 13 years old, and we had our first war.